I was 29 years old when this happened, and at the time, my life felt steady. I was working on an American cruise ship as a night bartender.
It was a normal job.
Long hours, friendly guests, loud music during the day, and quiet halls at night. Nothing about it felt dangerous. The ship had just left Miami that morning. By nightfall, most passengers were already relaxed. Families went back to their cabins early. Couples stayed at the bars. I cleaned glasses, wiped counters, and listened to the low sound of the ocean outside the windows. It was just another shift. Around midnight, the rain started. You couldn't see it from inside, but you could hear it. A steady tapping against the ship. It mixed with the sound of the engines and made everything feel slower.
Calm.
Predictable. When my shift ended, I did what I always did. I clocked out, nodded at the security guard near the elevator, and took the crew stairs down to my level. Crew areas were always quieter than passenger decks. Narrow hallways, white walls, soft lights that never fully turned off. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even thinking. I was tired and already planning to sleep. That's when I noticed something small that didn't feel right. As I walked, I heard footsteps behind me. That wasn't unusual. Crew worked all hours. But these footsteps didn't pass me. They didn't get closer either. They stayed the same distance behind me, matching my pace exactly. I stopped walking. The footsteps stopped too. I stood there for a few seconds listening. All I could hear was the ship and the rain outside.
No voices.
No doors opening. Nothing. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone else had stopped. Maybe I imagined it. I started walking again. The footsteps came back. This time, they were slower. I didn't turn around right away. I felt something tighten in my chest, even though I couldn't explain why. The hallway felt longer than usual. The lights seemed dimmer. Every door I passed was closed. I reached the end of the corridor and turned left toward my cabin. As I turned, I caught a reflection in the metal panel on the wall. Someone was standing behind me. I didn't see a face, just a shape, a dark figure where no one should have been.
No uniform.
No name badge, just stillness. I remember thinking one clear thing in that moment. On a ship full of people, whoever that was didn't want to be seen. At the time, working on a cruise ship felt like a stable choice. I had been doing hospitality jobs in the United States for years, and the cruise line paid well. You worked long shifts, but everything was structured. Meals were scheduled. Security was everywhere. It felt controlled. This ship was large, one of the newer American cruise liners. Multiple decks, casinos, theaters, pools, and restaurants on the upper levels. Crew areas were mostly below deck. That's where we lived. Long, narrow hallways, low ceilings, plain metal doors. Everything looked the same, which made it easy to get around once you learned the layout. This voyage was a 7-day cruise headed through the Caribbean. We had left Miami earlier that day. By the second night, everyone had settled into routine. Passengers learned the ship. Crew knew their schedules. Nothing unexpected ever happened once the ship was at sea. I worked the night shift at one of the smaller bars. It was quieter than the main lounges. Mostly older couples and solo travelers who wanted a drink before bed. I'd talk with them, clean up, then close around midnight. After that, I'd walk back to my cabin. The crew cabins were basic. Bunk beds. Small bathrooms.
No windows.
But after a long shift, it felt like home. Most nights, I showered and fell asleep within minutes. Security on board was strict. Cameras in most areas. Keycard access for crew-only sections. Uniforms clearly marked who belonged where. That's why I never worried when I walked alone at night. Everyone I passed was supposed to be there. That night, the weather had turned bad. Heavy rain outside. The ship rocked slightly, but nothing serious. The sound of rain carried through the metal walls and echoed faintly through the halls. It made everything quieter than usual. A few crew members were still around. I passed a housekeeper pushing a cart. I nodded to a security officer near the stairs. Everything looked normal. No one seemed out of place. I remember feeling relaxed as I headed below deck. My mind was already off work. I was thinking about calling my family the next morning when we docked. I was planning to grab coffee early and watch the ocean from the crew deck. There was nothing strange about the night. That's what made it unsettling later. Looking back, I realized how easily I trusted the environment. The ship felt safe because it was designed to feel that way. Thousands of people, locked doors, clear rules. I didn't know then that someone was already breaking those rules, moving quietly through places they weren't supposed to be, while everyone else believed nothing could go wrong. After I noticed the reflection in the metal panel, I kept walking. I didn't want to react too fast. On a ship, you learn not to panic over small things. Hallways make sounds. Lights reflect oddly. People move quietly at night. Still, my steps felt heavier. I became aware of every sound around me. The hum of the engines, the faint creaking of the ship, the rain hitting the outer walls in uneven bursts. I turned another corner and checked behind me. The hallway was empty. No one there. I stood still for a moment listening. Nothing moved. No doors opened.
No voices.
I told myself the person must have turned off somewhere else. As I continued, the lights above me dimmed slightly, then returned to normal. That happened sometimes when the ship adjusted power. But the timing made my stomach tighten. The corridor ahead seemed longer than before, like the distance to my cabin had stretched. I heard something again. Not footsteps this time. A soft scraping sound, like shoes brushing against metal. It came from behind me, then stopped suddenly. I slowed down. The sound matched my pace again. I passed a locked storage room and noticed the handle was slightly moving, as if someone had just touched it. I stopped and looked at it. The handle went still. I waited, expecting a door to open. It didn't. My breathing felt louder than it should have been. I reached an intersection where 3 hallways met. Normally, at least one would have light activity. A cart. A crew member. That night, all 3 were empty. The silence felt thick, like the ship was holding its breath. When I stepped forward, I heard a quiet exhale behind me. Not mechanical. Not air. A human breath. I turned quickly. The hallway was empty again, but the air felt close, like someone had been standing there seconds before. I started walking faster. My thoughts raced, but I stayed calm on the outside. I told myself to get to my cabin, lock the door. Everything would be fine. Then I noticed something else. One of the emergency lights at the end of the hall was off. It was always on. I had walked past it every night. The darkness beyond it looked deeper than it should have been. As I passed that dark section, I felt a sudden pressure, like someone was standing too close behind me. I didn't turn around this time. I knew then that whatever was happening wasn't normal. I wasn't alone in those halls, and whoever was there didn't want to be seen. I stopped walking and pressed my back lightly against the wall. I needed to be sure I wasn't imagining it. The hallway felt narrow now, like the metal walls had moved closer together. The air was warm and still. I listened. At first, there was nothing. Then I heard it again. Slow footsteps. Careful. They weren't trying to hide anymore. They were staying just out of sight. I stepped forward. The footsteps matched me. I turned a corner sharply and waited. A second later, a shadow crossed the floor at the far end of the hall. It disappeared behind the corner I had just come from. Whoever it was knew the layout. They weren't lost. My cabin was still 2 corridors away. I considered going back toward the stairs where security was posted, but the thought of turning my back on the dark hallway made my chest tighten. I didn't want to run yet. Running would confirm fear. I kept moving, slow and steady. As I passed another maintenance door, I heard a soft click. A door opening just enough to see. I glanced sideways and caught a glimpse of a face in the crack. One eye. Watching. The door closed quietly. My heart started beating harder, but my body stayed controlled. I was trained to stay calm around drunk guests and tense situations. This felt different. This felt planned. I reached a narrow section of hallway where the ceiling dipped lower. The lights here were dimmer. My reflection in the metal walls looked distorted. I felt boxed in, with nowhere to turn. The footsteps were closer now. I could hear breathing again. Slow. Intentional. I stopped suddenly and turned around. A man stood about 10 feet away. He wasn't in uniform. He wore dark clothes and kept his hands low by his sides. He didn't look surprised that I had seen him.
He didn't speak.
He just stared. The ship rocked slightly, and for a moment, the lights flickered. When they came back, he was closer. I took a step back. My shoulders hit the wall. I realized then that I had misjudged the situation. This wasn't someone wandering. This was someone following me. I glanced toward the end of the hall.
No exits.
Just my cabin door. The man took another step forward. I felt trapped below deck, surrounded by metal walls, with nowhere to run except straight past him or into a locked room. That's when I understood how quickly a safe place could become dangerous, and how easy it was for someone to move through the ship without anyone. I didn't wait for him to speak. The silence was worse than words. I turned and moved fast toward my cabin. I didn't run yet, but every step felt forced, like my legs were pushing through water. I heard his footsteps speed up behind me. The hallway felt endless. The lights above us buzzed softly as I reached my door. My hands shook as I pulled out my keycard. I swiped once. The light stayed red. Behind me, the footsteps stopped. I swiped again.
Red.
I could feel him standing there, close enough that I could hear his breathing clearly now.
Slow. Steady.
Like he wasn't in a hurry. The door unlocked on the third try. I pushed inside and slammed it shut behind me. I locked it immediately and stepped back. A second later, something hit the door hard. The impact shook the frame. The handle rattled violently as he tried to force it open. I pressed my weight against the door without thinking. My heart was pounding, but my mind stayed focused.
He didn't speak. He didn't yell.
He just kept trying to handle, testing the lock, pushing once more with his shoulder. I backed away and grabbed my phone. My fingers fumbled as I called ship security. I whispered my location, afraid he could hear me through the door. The lights in my cabin flickered. The ship rocked again. Another loud bang hit the door, harder than before. I expected it to break. Then it stopped. The silence afterward was heavy. I held my breath, listening.
No footsteps. No voices.
Nothing. I moved slowly to the peephole and looked out. The hallway was empty. I stayed frozen there until security arrived. When they knocked, I didn't open the door until they identified themselves and showed their badges through the peephole. They escorted me out, 2 officers on each side. My legs felt weak as we walked. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see him step out from a doorway. We didn't find him right away. That was the worst part, knowing he was still somewhere on the ship, moving through the same hallways, hiding. The same doors, while thousands of people slept without any idea what was happening below them. Security searched the crew deck for over an hour. I sat in the security office, wrapped in a thin jacket, answering the same questions again and again. What did he look like? What was he wearing?
Did he say anything?
I told them everything I could remember. They told me to stay there while they checked camera footage. When they came back, their expressions had changed. They weren't calm anymore. They closed the door and lowered their voices. One of the officers told me the man I described didn't appear on any passenger list. He wasn't crew either.
Nobody.
No assigned cabin. Nothing. At first, I thought that meant he had already escaped somehow. Then they showed me the footage. The cameras had caught him earlier that night. He stayed close to walls and moved only when hallways were empty. He knew exactly where the cameras were. He avoided them like someone who had studied the ship. What made it worse was how long he had been there. Security tracked him back 3 days. He had been sleeping in storage rooms and maintenance spaces. He used crew stairwells and avoided elevators. He followed crew members at night, but always backed off before being seen. Until me. One officer paused the video and zoomed in on a frame. The man's hand was visible. Tucked into his waistband was a knife. Not a small one. Something heavy. They told me they found it later. They caught him 2 decks down, hiding behind stacked supplies in a locked service room. When they searched him, they found multiple stolen keycards. Crew cards. Some active. Some deactivated. That's when the reality hit me. He didn't just wander onto the ship. He had been stealing access, learning patterns, watching routines. He knew when security shifted. He knew which doors were rarely checked. One of the officers admitted something that stayed with me. This wasn't the first time someone like this had been found on a cruise ship. It didn't make the news. It was handled quietly. The ship never told the passengers. They removed him at the next port and turned him over to local authorities. I never saw his face again. But the idea that he had lived among us for days, moving through hidden spaces, choosing when to get close, changed the way I saw everything. What scared me most wasn't the knife. It was how easily he blended into a place that was supposed to be secure. I finished the rest of my contract, but nothing felt the same after that night. I kept my head down. I avoided empty hallways. I only moved around the ship when other crew members were nearby. Even then, I never fully relaxed. Security told me the situation was handled. The man was off the ship.
The risk was gone.
That's what they said. But a few nights later, something happened that I never reported. I was lying in my cabin, lights off, trying to sleep. The ship was quiet again. The rain had returned, tapping softly against the metal walls, just like the night it all started. I heard footsteps outside my door. They stopped right in front of it. I held my breath and listened.
No knocking. No voices.
Just someone standing there long enough for me to notice. Then the steps moved away. The next morning, I checked with security. They said no one had been assigned to that corridor overnight.
No patrols. No maintenance.
I tried to convince myself it was stress. My mind replaying the memory. That fear had changed how I heard things. But later that week, another crew member asked if I had seen the man in dark clothes near the storage rooms. Security brushed it off, said it was probably a misunderstanding. I never found out if it was the same person. I never found out how many blind spots the ship really had. I never found out how many people could move through those hallways without being seen. When the cruise ended, I packed my bags and left without saying goodbye to anyone. I didn't step foot on another ship after that. Even now, years later, I still think about how many locked doors I trusted that night. Because on a ship surrounded by open water, there's nowhere to run. And sometimes, I wonder if the man they caught was the only one hiding below deck. I finished the contract, but I counted the days instead of enjoying them. Every shift felt longer. Every hallway felt tighter. I memorized which doors were locked and which ones opened with a crew card. I noticed things I had ignored before. Scratches near vents. Storage rooms that didn't seal properly. Cameras that didn't fully cover corners. Security kept saying the same thing. The man was gone. The situation was under control. I wanted to believe that. But the ship didn't feel empty anymore. It felt watched. A few nights after the incident, I started sleeping with the light on. I told myself it was just stress, that my body needed time to calm down. Still, I woke up multiple times a night listening for sounds outside my door. One night, I heard a soft click, like a key card being tested. It didn't open the door. It didn't try again. Whoever it was moved on quietly. The next morning, I checked the lock. There was a fresh scratch near the card reader.
Thin. Precise.
I reported it. Security inspected the door and told me it could have been from cleaning equipment. They didn't sound convinced, but they didn't push it either. A few days later, a housekeeper went missing for several hours during a night shift. When she was found, she was shaken but unharmed. She said she had gotten lost in a lower maintenance area and heard someone walking behind her the whole time. Security wrote it up as confusion. No announcements were made. No warnings were given. The cruise continued like nothing had happened. Passengers laughed. Music played. Drinks were served. From the outside, the ship looked safe, controlled, normal. Below deck, it felt different. On my last night, I packed early. I wanted to leave as soon as we docked. Around 2 a.m., I sat on my bunk, waiting for my alarm. That's when I heard it again. Footsteps. Slow.
Familiar.
They stopped outside my door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I watched the handle, waiting for it to shake like before. It didn't. Instead, something else happened. A shadow passed under the door. Just once. Like someone leaning in then stepping back. Then the footsteps walked away. In the morning, Security told me there had been no incidents overnight. No unusual activity. No reports. The cameras in my hallway had glitched for about 10 minutes around 2 a.m. They said it happens sometimes. When we docked, I walked off the ship without looking back. I didn't tell anyone goodbye. I didn't file any more reports. I just wanted distance. Years have passed since then. I work on land now. Normal hours. Normal buildings. But I still notice things other people ignore. Reflections in glass. Sounds that match my footsteps. Doors that close too softly. Sometimes, when I'm in a long hallway late at night, I feel that same pressure behind me, like someone keeping pace, staying just far enough away to remain unseen. I never learned the man's name. I never learned how he boarded the ship. I never learned if he acted alone. What stays with me is how easy it was for him to exist there, hidden in plain sight, surrounded by rules, cameras, and people who assumed someone else was paying attention. Cruise ships sell the idea of safety. Floating cities with nowhere to hide. But I learned something different. If someone wants to disappear, all they need is a place where everyone feels secure enough to stop looking. And sometimes, I still wonder if the man they caught was the real threat. Or just the one who made a mistake and got noticed. The strange part is how normal everything looks when I think back on it now. I can still picture the ship from the outside. Bright lights. Music playing on the upper decks. People smiling in vacation photos. Nothing about it suggests what was happening below. After I got home, friends asked how the job was. I told them it was fine. I didn't mention the nights I woke up sweating. I didn't tell them I still checked behind doors before entering rooms. It felt easier to keep it to myself. Weeks later, I received an email from the cruise line. It was short. It thanked me for completing my contract and reminded me of confidentiality policies. Nothing else. No mention of the incident. No follow-up questions. That bothered me more than anything. I started searching online quietly late at night. I looked for reports.
Forum.
Anything about similar incidents. I found vague posts from other crew members on different ships. Mentions of unauthorized people. Missing key cards. Hallways where cameras stopped working for short periods of time. None of the posts stayed up for long. Sometimes I think about the moment I saw him in the hallway. How calm he looked. How patient. It didn't feel rushed. It felt practiced. Like he knew exactly how close he could get without being caught. I still avoid cruise ships. I don't even like long hotel corridors. If I hear footsteps matching mine, I stop walking just to see if they stop too. Because I learned something that night. Danger doesn't always rush at you. Sometimes it follows quietly, waiting for the right place where no one is watching. And even now, I don't know if the ship ever truly became empty again after I left.